Yes, today we are going to see ledger accounting. How to open expenses account, expenses prepaid accounts, and expenses due, and so on. Now, expenses prepaid is an asset. It will have a debit balance. Expenses due is a liability. It will have a credit balance. There are two types of balances. We have balance at end and balance at start. All balances which are at the start of the period should be recorded above the total. And all balances which are at the end of the period will have to be recorded below the total. And all closing balances will have to be followed by a balance CD. Expenses prepaid assets, it will have a debit balance. In case expenses prepaid are at the start, it will be recorded on the debit side of the expenses account above the total. In case expenses owing at the start, it will be recorded on the credit side above the total. Expenses prepaid at end will be recorded below the total on the debit side, and it will be followed by balance CD. Expenses due at end, it will be recorded below the total, and it will be followed by balance CD. Now, first of all, we have to know how to record the balances. All balances at the start will be recorded above the total, and all balances at the end will be recorded below the total. So if we know how to record balances under this topic, then it becomes very easy to do it. Now, you copy. Types of balances. We have number one, balance at start, and we have number two, balance at end. We write down number one, balance at start. All balances which are at the start of the period will be recorded above the total. Number two, balance at end. All balances which are at end of the period will be recorded below the total, and it will be followed by a balance CD carried down. Okay. Now, types of balances. Balance at start, and we have balance at end. All balances at start will be recorded above the total, and all balances at end will be recorded below the total, and it will be followed by a balance CD. Now, let's see an example. Let's see an example. This one, we have already copied balance at the start and balance at end. All balance at the start will be recorded above the total, and all balances at end will be recorded below the total. We have seen that expenses prepaid asset, it will have a debit balance. Expenses due is a liability, it will have a credit balance. Once we know whether it is assets or liabilities, in case of assets it will have a debit balance, in case of liabilities it will have a credit balance. Now let us see. Expenses prepaid. Another name for prepaid, in advance. And expired. Prepayments. These expenses, they will have a debit balance because they are assets, they represent assets. Expenses due. Another name for due, owing, unpaid, in arrears, expired, and so on. So these will have a credit balance because they represent liabilities. We'll have a credit balance, and this will have a debit balance. Expenses prepaid assets, expenses due liabilities. Now once we know that expenses prepaid assets and expenses due liabilities, then we can record the balances. In case they are balanced at start, it will be recorded above the total, and if they are balances at end, they will be recorded below the total. And all closing balances will be followed by balance CD, balance carried down. Now we are going to see an example how to record balances in the ledger. How to record balances in the ledger, a very easy task to do. Now expenses prepaid January $4,000. Expenses due December $7,000. Now we have to record these two balances. This one is balance at the start, January, and this one is balance at end. We have to record it in the expenses account. Whatever types of expenses it is, we have to record it in the same way, expenses account. So this one is called total. This one here, this one is called total. This is called total. When I say record above the total, I say it will be on the debit side. It will be on the debit side or on the credit side. If it is at start, balance at start will be recorded above the total. At start will be recorded above the total. In case it is balance at end, it will be recorded below the total. It can be on the debit side or on the credit side, depending whether it is assets or liabilities. So closing balance at end, this will be followed by balance CD. The same thing, we have to copy it again. This is balance at end, and in case if it is a liability, it will have a credit balance if it is at end, and then it will be followed by balance CD. The same thing you will have to copy again. So this is an example how to prepare an expenses account. Now we are going to record expenses prepaid $4,000 at the start and expenses due $7,000 at end. Now let us see how to record this in the expenses account. So we have to open expenses account. We know that all balances at the start will be recorded above the total, and all balances at end should be recorded below the total. And all closing balances, they will be followed by balance CD, balance carried down. This is called the total. And above the total, it can be on the debit side or on the credit side, depending whether it is an asset or a liability. If it is prepaid expenses, prepaid, it will be asset. If it is at the start, it will be recorded on the debit side above the total. If it is a liability, it will be recorded on the credit side above the total if it is at the start. Now, we have expenses prepaid. Expenses prepaid. Asset. If it is asset, it will have a debit balance. It will have a debit balance, and it is at the start, it will be recorded on the debit side. On the debit side at the start, we'll record $4,000. Expenses due. Expenses due. Liabilities. It will be recorded. It will have a credit balance. It is at the end. At end, it will be recorded on the credit side below the total. This is called the total. This is a total. So below the total on the credit side, because expenses due is a liability, so it will be on the credit side. Balance BD, how much? 7,000. And this one you will have to copy it again. Balance CD, 7,000. So how to record balances? At the start, we record above the total assets on the debit side, expenses prepaid. If it was expenses due, it will be on the credit side above the total. Now, expenses due liabilities, it is at the end, it will be recorded below the total on the credit side, and then it will be followed by balance CD. Now, let us see question number 1. In the meantime, you can read question number 1. This is an example. How to prepare ledger accounts, expenses account, prepaid, expenses due, and so on. How to record balances. So for concerning ledger accounting, we will be given 3 information: balance at the start, payments during the period, and balance at end. So balance at the start will be recorded above the total. It will be on the debit side, on the credit side, depending whether it is an asset or a liability. If it is an asset, it will be on the debit side above the total. If it is a liability, it will be on the credit side above the total. Now, let's see this question. So, balances extracted on 1st January 2020. We have balances for 1st January 2020. Rent account, rent prepaid, 1,200. Wages due, 4,000. Sundry expenses due, 6,000. So these are balances at start. These are balances at start. So we know where to record them. Balance at start. Where to record balance at start. And this one, for the time being, this is payments. We forget it for the time being. We just know how to record balances. Then this one, balance 31st December. This is balance at end. So we are going to record the balances first, then we will record the payments. So what are the accounts that we will have to open? We have to open rent account, wages account, and sundry expenses account. So we are going to open all these accounts. We have one rent account. We will have the total for rent account, and then we will have to open wages account. Again, we will have the dollar sign and the total, and then we will open sundry expenses account. So these accounts will have to open 3 accounts only. Sundry expenses account. So we have to prepare these accounts properly so that we can record the balances. Right, prepaid is an asset. Prepaid asset. It is at the start. It will be recorded on the debit side in the right account. Balance BD, we have 1,200. We have wages due liabilities. Wages due liabilities, it is at the start, it will be recorded on the credit side. Liabilities will be recorded on the credit side above the total. Send expenses due, again liabilities, it will be recorded on the credit side above the total. Balance BD, how much? 6,000. And now we are going to record balance at end. Balances extracted on 31st December 2020. Right owing. Liabilities, it is at the end, it will be recorded below the total on the credit side, below the total. Balance BD, how much? 1,500. And all closing balances will have to be followed by balance CD, 1,500. And then we have wages prepaid. Wages prepaid asset, it is at the end, it will be recorded below the total on the debit side. Wages prepaid, 5,500. And then it will be followed by balance CD, 5,500. Wages. We have send expenses due liabilities. Liabilities will have a credit balance. It is at the end, it will be recorded below the total on the credit side. Balance BD with some, and then it will be followed by balance CD with some. Okay. Then we have to record payments. The following expenses were paid by check. When we pay bank account, we have to credit. If the bank account will have to credit, therefore expenses account will have to debit. We have to debit rent, we have to debit wages, we have to debit send expenses. So these payments will be recorded on the debit side of the expenses account. So on the debit side here, we will write down bank 60,000, and here bank on the debit side again, wages 40,000. All payments will be recorded on the debit side of the expenses account. Send expenses credit, send expenses debit bank, credit bank, debit send expenses will have bank combien? 30,000. So here we are, we have already recorded all balances at the start. So right prepaid at the start, all balances at the start will be recorded above the total. Right prepaid at the start, it will be recorded on the debit side above the total. Wages due at the start again, but liabilities, it will be recorded on the credit side above the total. Send expenses due liabilities, again it is at the start, it will be recorded above the total on the credit side, 6,000. Right wages and expenses, all these have been paid by check. When we pay credit bank account, debit rent, debit wages, debit send expenses. Closing balances, owing at end, it will have a credit balance. So here, and then we have to copy it again. Prepaid at end, it will have a debit balance, but below the total. Send expenses due liabilities, it will have a credit balance below the total, then it will be followed by balance CD. That's all. Then we have to close the accounts. We have to close this one. This will give us 62,700, 62,700. This will be transferred to income statement. And this one, 40,000. We have 40,000 here, and then we have to deduct in 31,29,500. This will be transferred to income statement, and here we have to close it 30 mil with some, and this one we have to remove. This will give us 24 mil with some. This will be transferred to income statement. So here we are so far concerning ledger accounting. Very easy. We are going to make a summary of what we studied so far concerning this topic. All balances at start, types of balances. We have balance at start and balance at end. All balances at start will be recorded above the total, and all balances at end will be recorded below the total, and they will be followed by balance CD. And payments in the bank account we will have to credit, and then in the expenses account we have to debit. So very easy. You just have to master how to record opening and closing balances in the ledger. Thank you very much for your attention.